Today we've got a crazy nuclear revenge story of maxing out somebody's credit card. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, giving my father his own treatment. I come from a broken family. I won't scream it out on the streets, but those who are close to me know that I'm a huge advocate for helping people in abusive situations get out because I've experienced it firsthand. I was the first child of two, and somehow that made things worse for me. I was born into the average white/black household. My father was white, my mother was black, and the first 10 years of my life were spent protecting myself and my little sister from my father's wrath. He used to be a good-natured man who cared for his family and friends until he lost a job after being framed by a coworker and decided that his wife was the reason for his terrible luck. She did all she could do to make him feel better, cleaning up after him when he was done drinking and spending hours cooking different things, with the hopes that he would like one of them, but my father, who we'll be calling Ray, was bent on making both hers and ours worse. In the beginning, he never really hit my mother or my sister and I. She always made sure that we were out of the way while he just talked down on her repeatedly, throwing things around and messing up the entire house. As the first child, it's always been my job to protect my sibling, and so that's what I did. While mom and dad fought it out in the living room, I stayed with my sister telling her stories and acting as if nothing serious was going on with our parents. She was 7 years younger than me and very easy to fool, so I got away with it. After the fights, my father would usually go out and get drunk, and I would be given the task of cleaning up whatever damages had been made to the house. As a kid, I can't begin to explain to you how damaging it was, seeing your mother sobbing her eyes out and being unable to do anything about it. During this time, there were still some good days. Sometimes Ray would suggest going out to dinner as a family or having a movie night, and we would all jump at the idea because it was so rare, and we all wanted to grasp the semblance of family that remained. With time, the activities became less fun, and more of us just watching him drink with his friends until we had to carry him home. Thankfully, he figured out how weird this was, and one day he just never did it again. On my mother's birthday, I think I was about 15 years old at the time, my sister and I baked her a cake and used most of my saved-up allowance to get her a dress that she'd been eyeing from the last time we went to the mall together. She was pleasantly surprised, and we were having a pretty good day until Ray got home from one of his week-long drinking sprees. That was the first time he had laid his hands on her in front of us, under the drunk claim that she was cheating on him, and her new boyfriend was the one who got her the cake in the gift bag. I wasn't able to get my 8-year-old sister out of there quick enough, and we all watched in horror as he hit our mom so hard that she passed out. It was an unspoken rule between my sister and I from then on to protect our mother. I tried to convince her to get a divorce or leave, and she always threw the "who will pay your bills if I leave" question at us. The hilarious thing about that was the fact that she was the one who worked, paid rent, and our fees. One day, Ray beat up my little sister for accidentally breaking a plate while doing the dishes. I tried to stop him, but given that he was a fully grown man against a teenager, his size was unfortunately an added advantage. He even broke my arm. It took me a few more months and him breaking my arm to the point where the doctor threatened amputation for my mother to decide to take my advice and get the heck out. Asking for a divorce was out of the question because Ray was a predator at this point. So one night she had us pack our belongings, take the bus, and run away. We stayed in beat-down motels and offered to clean them in exchange for some breakfast and a place to sleep, couch-hopped at a few of our friends' places for days at a time, and this happened until we were able to find an abandoned trailer that was selling for next to nothing. With a little fixer-upper and some TLC, Mom sold off her car and we made the van into our home. There was a public school in the area, so we also just enrolled there. For the first few months, we survived on food stamps and the charity of Mom's friends. I did odd jobs around and got paid for them, and that went a really long way in getting the van as well. It was hilarious because even though this was the most exhausting time of our lives, we were having the most fun together. My sister and I learned that our mother was very good at fixing things up. In the midst of all this chaos, I turned 16 and got a more stable job at a local fast food restaurant to help Mom out. My sister was very good, and even though she was so young, she understood that things were hard and she knew how to behave accordingly. Occasionally, she took up dog sitting and babysitting for people in the neighborhood and made some money. She was also a smart little thing who found many different ways to sell dreams and aspirations to her classmates for real, actual cash. It was a really rough couple of years, but soon enough, we were comfortable enough to rent our own place and live a little better. I was almost 19 when Ray found us again. I had no idea how he did it, because the friends that Mom housed with completely understood the situation and swore to keep their mouths shut. I honestly even thought that he'd forgotten about us until he showed up to the new place in the middle of the night, crying and begging our mother to take him back. He was hysterical, and it took a lot of work to calm him down until the morning so that the neighbors would not get too upset and call the cops. When all four of us were able to gather around to talk, Ray apologized to us all for the pain, claiming that he'd spent the past 2 years in agony just looking for us. My sister, who was already a preteen and way too smart for her own age, didn't believe a word of what he said. Neither did I. After all, we still had the scars from the day he beat us up all those years ago, and my left hand still looked slightly odd when I let it stay limp. For some reason, however, our mother decided that she liked the idea of giving him a second chance. I decided never to call him Dad again, instead choosing to go by his name, Ray, and my mother nearly had an aneurysm at the thought of it and insisted that I call him Dad. Most of this took place around the time that I had to leave for college. I got a scholarship, so I was worried about leaving my mother and sister at the mercy of the same beast who used to be our abuser. I observed things until I was somewhat assured that my sister could protect herself and our mother before finally going off to college. I graduated high school at 19 because of all of the inconsistencies in my schooling and health. We couldn't afford school while we were hopping from one place to the other. During the summer, I was made sure that my sister took self-defense classes and learned to defend herself with a knife and many other household items. It was a gradual process, but Ray started being a jerk to my mother again, usually when everyone else was away because he knew that she would keep it away from me so she wouldn't worry me while I was away in school. 1 whole year passed before anyone picked up on Ray's abusive ways. He got smarter too and ran off with a good chunk of her money before I could take time off college and work in time to teach him a good lesson. None of us blamed our mother because we understood that being a single mother was extremely difficult. No matter how well behaved we were, she was still going to need the support of another person. With this knowledge, we started to set her up on dates with people who we made sure to investigate closely. It was quite the adventure, but what mattered was that she was having a good time. By the time I was rounding up college, my little sister was just getting in, and we spent our first and last years of college together. It didn't surprise me when one fine day, my sister and I showed up to the house to find Ray sitting on the couch, looking frazzled and skinny and just sick. I was about to charge when my mother asked me to take a second to just hear him out. I knew that this was going to be a cycle that would just repeat itself, but I listened anyway. Ray apologized again for being a bad husband and parent, succeeded in bringing back all of the bitter memories that we'd managed to bury. Of course, none of us besides my mother bought the story, and we asked for proof that he had really changed. Apparently, he was a recovering addict, and the money he stole last time he was around was to settle a loan shark that was after his life. He went on about how it made him realize that he had a good thing in the form of a family and had spent his whole life ruining it. I zoned out because, for the first time in his life, he sounded very genuine, and it was uncomfortable to hear that kind of tone on a man that you associate all your bad life experiences with. By the end of his speech, my mother was in tears, begging us to accept and forgive our father. I let him know that I was watching him closely because I had no trust in him around my family. Shortly after, I graduated from college and got a remote job in an apartment that was only a few blocks away from my mother's house. My sister was not comfortable with Ray being around, but our mother was so joyful that there was no way we could say anything to her about her prodigal husband. He didn't start messing up immediately because he knew our eyes were watching him closely. He did things like buy flowers and random gifts for my sister under the pretext of wanting to make up for all the years he was away. But nobody was falling for his tricks. She was upset that we refused to accept his gestures, and Too many times we had arguments that ended in her telling me how I didn't want her to finally be happy with her family. Somehow, Ray had convinced her that we were the enemy and that he was the good guy. It got so bad that I stopped visiting for a while and decided to stay at my own place. Naturally, my sister also came over to mine more often, leaving our mom alone with our dad. This was really our big mistake. She would never tell us if Ray was hurting her because she wanted to save face. Because of how upset we were with her, we also didn't check in with her for a little while. Nobody really noticed anything until the day my sister snuck in while both parents were supposed to be out to pick a change of clothes and borrow some things without mom's permission. The entire house was quiet until she went by mom's bedroom, only to find it wide open with Ray hooking up with a woman that she didn't know. My sister is a bit of a genius and she was able to get some video footage before she escaped back to my apartment and showed me what she had. Later that night, I invited my mother over to my place and attempted to have one last conversation with her about Ray. She confessed to me that she actually knew about it, and he had just hid her into silence. The knowledge that he had laid hands on my mother once again enraged me, and I made a plan to teach him an even bigger lesson. Since I lived in the bad side of the area before, I knew a lot of street kids. I was even friends with a lot of them and hosted them to dinner and got them out of trouble every couple of months. They responded to me almost immediately. I called, and when they showed up to my house, I explained the situation with my dad. I did plan to take legal action, as my sister had already talked my mother into officially filing for a divorce from my father. My friend picked up my father from a bar, knocked him out, and took him to an abandoned side of the road. I was already waiting, and I made sure to beat him up until my knuckles were bloody. By the time I was done, he was unconscious and unrecognizable. I left him in the custody of my friends for a week before they abandoned him on the street and made him call 911 himself. The divorce proceedings went very smoothly, and my mother was awarded a lot of money by the court. Currently, she's working on becoming a foster parent for displaced kids, and she could not be happier. We've not seen or heard from Ray in years now, and I'm glad he finally got the hint, even if it took us a while to establish it. Honestly, with a guy like this who continues to keep popping up, although OP seems to be confident that they've gotten rid of him, I wouldn't be surprised that if Ray hits a new low that they're going to somehow try to pop up again. Just seems like the natural cycle for him. That said, our next story is, my aunt outed me to my parents. I maxed out her credit card. My revenge was sweet and fun, for me of course. It was fun because I got my revenge by doing something that I loved doing the most, shopping. My mom was already engaged to my dad when my grandmother got pregnant with another child. It was unusual given the age gap between my mom and the new baby, but everyone was overjoyed. My grandparents had wanted a child for the longest time. My grandparents are Baptists, a young couple who started dating as teenagers, hooked up, got pregnant, and were forced to get married when they were nowhere near ready because their parents were serious church-going Christians and would never let their kids have a child outside wedlock. At ages 18 and 19 respectively, my grandparents got married with my mom lying comfortably in my grandmother's belly. After they got married, my grandfather went to the city in search of a job while my mom lived with his parents. He soon returned and was appointed as an assistant pastor in the small church they attended in their town. My grandfather and my grandmother didn't have another child for a long time. Even after they were ready to have another child, they prayed and waited on God, but no child was forthcoming. They probably accepted that they wouldn't have another child and that my mother would be their only child. Until many years later when they had my aunt. Since they thought my mom was their only child, my grandparents had their nails clawed in her neck. She could never do anything outside of town. They were quite overprotective and overbearing too. My mom rebelled and met my dad, a boy who was on the wrong side of the tracks. He was someone that my parents could never have approved of, and my mom knew this, so she got pregnant by him when she was just 18. Just like my grandparents' parents tried to do to them. My grandparents tried to make my parents marry and have my dad baptized, but he was having none of it. He refused, and he and my mom ended their relationship. My mom was so hurt that she had a miscarriage. Some years later, my dad returned after traveling away from the town. He had met the Lord and had become a baptized Christian. He returned to apologize to my mom, and they soon started going out again. This time, my grandparents were in support and had approved of their relationship because my mom was getting an education and my dad had become religious. It was after my dad proposed to my mom that my grandmother discovered that she was pregnant. She said she felt weird about sharing the news with the church and family at first, but she and my granddad decided to flaunt what they believed was a blessing. They had wanted another child for a very long time, and they had finally gotten pregnant. The church was happy with them, and a local newspaper had even spoken about it. It certainly favored my grandmother that she wasn't so old anyway. She had my mom when she was a teenager after all. Months later, my aunt was born, 2 weeks before my parents' wedding. She was the miracle baby, and everyone loved and doted on her. 4 years after she was born, my parents had me. My aunt was just nearly 5 years older than me. She was like a sibling. Whenever my mom would take me over to my grandparents' home, that happened a lot, we would act up and even fight like siblings. Growing up, my mom would yell, "Hey, that's your auntie," and everyone burst out laughing. I would tell my friends about my aunt and they'd expect to see a much older woman. "Maybe stop telling people I'm your aunt," my aunt said to me one day. We were teenagers at the time. I said, "Oh, sorry, does that make you feel too old, auntie?" I teased her, and she playfully slapped my wrist. "Listen, I'm serious. 1, I'm not ready to be an actual aunt, and I know I'm one, but I really don't feel like I'm old enough to be qualified to be called one." I said, "I totally get you. Sometimes I wonder how my mom could be your sister." "That's wild," I laughed again, but she frowned, so I knocked the grin off my face. "How about I call you cousin then? Are you fine with that?" She affirmed that, and her mood drastically improved. Ever since, I told anyone who cared to know about our relationship that she was my cousin. I also stopped the auntie jokes and only called her that whenever we were alone together. My aunt was my confidant growing up. I told her nearly everything, and she told me everything too. Growing up with super religious parents meant that we had too many secrets from our parents. She was my friend. She wasn't allowed to date until she was 16, but she started dating way before that, and I knew. I never really dated anyone as a young teenager. I liked boys, and I found out that really early, but I couldn't tell anyone. I was too scared to even admit it to myself. My parents were super religious. Our town was a small one, and everyone knew everyone. If I were to make any mistake, I didn't know what my parents' reaction might be. When I was 15, we had a teenagers camp, and teenagers from different Baptist churches all came around. At camp, I met a boy who I knew right off the bat was like me. We exchanged eye contact and we both knew. He was a year older than me and we started a conversation. It didn't take long before we started waiting for others to fall asleep so we could make out in the dark. It was so good. I felt free. It wasn't even about him and what we were doing. I just felt great to have met someone who wasn't just like me but liked me too. On the night before the last day of camp, my cousin and I hung out during lunch. I wanted to tell her, but I just couldn't. She said, "Who have you been fooling around with? I've never seen you this happy in teenage camp." I wanted very badly to tell her, to share my joy with her, but I just couldn't trust her. I just smiled and changed the topic. As time passed, my cousin would ask about my sexuality. The last time she asked about me, I had to ask why she was so curious. "I've just never seen you get crazy about a girl." "Maybe I'm not crazy about girls," I said. "So you're crazy about boys then?" "Leave it alone," I yelled and left. She stopped asking ever since, and we never had that conversation again. Not until I came out to her. When my cousin was 21 and I was getting ready to graduate from high school, she started dating an older man who had a lot of money. Her parents were mad at her. They were uncomfortable with the man's age and the fact that he was not a Christian. My aunt was not listening to her parents. She went ahead and moved in with the rich guy. Her parents were so upset that they cut her off. Even my parents were mad about it. In the months that followed, my aunt and I became even closer. I visited her often and we got in the pool and just talked about random stuff. She was at a very confused point in her life and her boyfriend was hardly ever around. "Do you think I made the right decision?" she would sometimes ask me. She had dropped out of school and was doing nothing at that moment. Maybe it was the knowledge that she was no longer communicating with her parents and mine, or the shared feeling of being unwanted children. One day we were in the pool as usual, just drinking apple juice and talking about random stuff when I told her that I'm gay. My aunt is someone who always had a lot to say, even in the most difficult situations and moments. But she said nothing, and that hurt me. For 10 minutes, 10 awkward minutes, and probably the longest 10 minutes of my life, she just kept quiet and stared into space. My aunt has always known about my sexuality. I may have hidden it from her and even everyone else, but I'm certain that they have wondered many times why I never had a girlfriend or talked about dating any girl. My mom even tried to set me up with a girl from church once. We went to a church dance together and I avoided her ever since. She was a sweet, pretty girl, but I just wasn't interested. My mom tried to get the details of how our date went, but I wasn't interested in sharing. I'm sure my mom would have doubted my heterosexuality many times, but she probably assured herself that as long as I wasn't seeing any boy and had not come out to her, she still had time to pray it away. My dad, on the other hand, was not bothered at all by my lack of interest in girls. I once heard him assuring my mom that I was fine. He even told her that he'd rather I was uninterested in girls for now because it helped me focus in school. He was right. I was one of the best students in my grade, but it had nothing to do with not being attracted to girls, of course. "Are you going to say something?" I asked after waiting 10 long minutes for a response from my aunt. "I'm sorry, I just didn't know what to... Listen, I'm sorry." I felt stupid, but I tried to brush it off. "You've always known anyway, you asked me about it many times." She said, "Yes, I did. I guess I expected that you would deny it, or that I was just making things up in my head." "You don't want it to be true?" I asked. I didn't know what I expected from my aunt, but that was not it. "Let's just talk about something else," she said. She changed the topic and went on to talk about her plans to get back into college. I felt horrible about it and wished I hadn't told her. The next couple of days were weird for me. I regretted telling her, and it didn't make it better that she never even called or invited me over. Nearly 2 weeks after I came out to her, she invited me to her boyfriend's, and I went. She apologized for her silence and admitted that she had to take time to process what I had told her. I accepted her apology and we returned to being friends. That day, we went shopping for groceries and she showed me her boyfriend's credit card. He had gotten one in his name, especially for her. She was on the phone with him when I got to the cashier, so she just mouthed the credit card PIN and I paid for the stuff we bought. She looked really upset after the conversation with her boyfriend. "He is too controlling," she complained to me when we got in the car. "Maybe end it?" She said, "You think?" "I was hoping this relationship would be worth it," she said, her eyes welling up with tears. By worth it, she meant that the relationship was worth being estranged from her family. When I returned home that evening, I realized that my aunt's credit card was still with me, and I texted her about it. She said, "Keep it. It's going to be my consolation when I end my relationship with this man. I should be able to use it to take care of stuff for a few months after moving out." I found out that my aunt had ratted me out the day after my high school graduation. I still don't understand why she did it. Maybe she wanted to get favors from her parents and didn't want to be seen as the bad one. She just had to throw me under the bus. Everything was going perfectly and my granddad was going to pay for my college tuition, but she ruined it. My grandparents and parents invited me to my grandparents' home and they began to grill me. My mom was in tears. She wept so badly, it was as though someone had died. "There's a therapy class for people like you in the church," my grandfather started. I had read many times about gay people being coerced by their loved ones to go through different processes of people trying to change them and their sexuality, and I was never going to allow myself to go through that, especially since I was a legal adult already. I said, "No." My grandfather looked up in surprise. He wasn't used to being challenged by anyone in the family or anyone at church. "You know what happens if you don't go?" "Yes, sir," I replied quietly and sturdily. "Daddy, I promise I'll talk to him," my mom started, but her dad hushed her. I never went to therapy, and just as my grandfather promised, he cut me off. In a way, I was kind of glad about what had happened. I wanted to go to college, but I knew I could do other stuff too. My parents said I was welcome to stay, but I wasn't interested in living with them. An organization promised to pay my rent for the first 6 months. I moved out of my parents' home with nearly nothing. My aunt's credit card was still with me, and the last I heard, she had moved out of her man's house and was back to her parents. She sent me a text to apologize for what had happened, but I ignored her. I was on my way to go shopping for furniture and clothes when I saw her text. I went to the mall and shopped with her card. I even got a new refrigerator. She texted to ask for the credit card back, telling me about how she was stranded and could no longer live with her parents. I ignored all her messages. I went out on another day and did more shopping with the credit card. I didn't stop until it was maxed out. After that, I broke the card, took a picture of the broken card, and sent it to her. She called me numerous times, but I never took her calls. To this day, my aunt and I don't have any relationship. My grandfather is dead, and my parents and I are okay, but I don't speak to my blabbermouth cousin. Isn't this just sad how they allowed their religion to destroy the relationships they had with their own family? And obviously I'm not talking about OP, I'm talking about their parents and grandparents dying on that hill where you have to conform to their beliefs or else you don't even deserve a place in their life. It's just kind of ridiculous in my opinion. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now if you want to hear another crazy revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.